So Max Edmondson then gets the pole position once again. Now, Jack, he won the first race from pole at Brands Hatch last week, but actually didn't have things all his own way, did he? He didn't get the best of starts, didn't lead through the first corner or so. The last thing he wants in this one is to get sucked back in to the battle pack behind him, which I think could get quite feisty in the early stages.
Yeah, Thruxton, as a rule and as a circuit, is harder to pull away from. Even if you do have a 3/10 advantage in qualifying, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have it all your own way for the first lap, first race, shall we say, because the slipstream effect just gives everybody else an opportunity just to keep you in line and keep you in tow and keep you in sort of in threat of losing that position, basically. So I reckon the likes of Scott Bugner, Chris Shepherd, Max Bird, if they don't fall over themselves in the first half of the lap, they'll be giving Max Edmondson something to think about towards the end of the club chicane. And as Edmondson has said, and as we've all explained, once you start battling, it doesn't matter how quick you are. If you start battling, you're going to get slowed up. So Edmondson really needs to get his head down and hope that the drivers behind him do him a favour rather than hamper him.
That's the plan. Will it work out that way? Well, we're about to find out, because round number 3 of the VRRC Civic Cup here from the Thruxton circuit down in virtual Hampshire in the UK is about to get underway. The very bright red lights come on the starting gantry, and when they go out, we're racing for 20 minutes. Max Edmondson on pole, Scott Bugner alongside him. The lights go out, they roar towards the first corner, even start really for most of the top 4 or 5 on the grid. A lot of the shuffling coming behind them. Edmondson then leads them through Allard for the first time and up towards the complex 4-lap one, with Scott Bugner literally pushing him up the hill. Talk about working together. Some real teamwork there as they hit the brakes now into the complex, and up the inside goes Bugner for the race lead. I'm not convinced that was in the script. They're side by side through Campbell, through Cobb, then into the final right-hander at Seagrave. Is Bugner going to go through? Yes, he does. So Bugner gets the lead then with Edmondson down into second position. Max Bird there in third, and one car off further back. Despite that, though, Jack, a relatively clean start.
Yeah, it's Elliot Dalton Ayres as we see another change for the lead as Max Edmondson retakes it, but only temporarily, as they go through Noble, and Scott Bugner is on the inside. Max Bird watching this with a mighty amount of interest, I'm sure, as they're heading towards church now. This will be a bit of a scary place to go at the inside, but Max Bird is clearly feeling very brave, and I'm not sure I would be the same sort of bravery on lap 1, going up the inside of church on Scott Bugner. Luckily, they sort of pull out of it, because I think that could have been a big crash as Edmondson heads down towards the club chicane, leads the field, but that's not been the story of this entire lap 1. Scott Bugner hunkered into his boot of the rear of that Civic, but he doesn't outbrake him into the final chicane just yet. So it's still Edmondson, Bugner, Bird and Sutton, the top 4.
Right, hold your breath, everyone. Does everyone get through the chicane? They're all sort of coming out the other side. No, we've got a bit of a collision further back, but actually that could have been a lot worse. More contact on the exit. John Jones goes around. Paul Laramie, I think, was involved in all of that. Kyle Felvers delayed as well, but that was a bit later on, I think. Felvers diving for the pit lane. That is a big shame for Kyle Felvers. Things just not working out at all for the HFT racing driver, and he is in the pit lane. Right, change for second here, excuse me. And Max Bird gets ahead of Scott Bugner. This will do nothing at all for the plans of Max Edmondson and Scott Bugner to work together, because Max Bird separates them. For the time being, it helps Edmondson. He'd broken away as a result of their battling, but will Bird now have the pace to go after the race leader?
I was going to say, realistically, Edmondson will probably be quietly thinking that's quite a good thing for him personally and this race, because he's already got over a second gap between himself and Bird, and Lord knows Bugner will be very intrigued to get past him and get back into second place. We got then Mick Sutton and Chris Shepherd, who are also very interested in the mix. So 4 drivers fighting for second place. Arguably, it might even be 5 as Joel Last gets very close and people going very close off the circuit. Mick Sutton, but I think that's Chris Shepherd bouncing along in the background. Indeed it is. So Chris Shepherd goes down to 5th position. Just be thankful that he's still in this race. Bugner pushing Max Bird into the final chicane, maybe pushing him a little bit wide as well. Listen to the apex as Bird, as Bugner trying to do everything he can to get past and back into second.
It's an old NASCAR technique that pushed them down the straight, then they arrive at the corner a bit faster than they were expecting, and I think that's what happened. Max Bird outbraked himself, and look, it cost him not 1 but 2 places. Bugner back into second, Sutton third. What what a drive this is from Mick Sutton. I have to say, really impressed with Mick's pace here. Had a 10th and a 13th at Brands Hatch. He's now in 3rd place, but on the receiving end from some contact there from Max Bird. Shepherd takes advantage to get up the inside as well, and Max Bird dropping like a rock in this race. 3 wide into Seagrave. That's never going to work. Around the outside goes, who was that? That was Joel Lask, I think, wasn't it? Almost round the outside of both of them in that black car. Has to settle back in line behind Shepherd and Bird. That was brave. It almost worked. But Joel Lask very much a part of this fight now.
Eric Axelson and Andy Carroll as well, getting their elbows out and their wing mirrors scuffed as they go through some of the fastest parts of this circuit, completely flat out. The majority of Thruxton, as we see Joel Lask off on the outside, Max Bird on the inside of Chris Shepherd, who's trying his best to muscle his way back through. They're all trying to muscle their way back through as Joel Lask just about gets back on the circuit before church. That's going to really hamper him going towards the club chicane. He's going to be nowhere near this fight anymore unless they keep holding each other up, which, by the looks of this, they're going to for the next 15 or 16 minutes. Eric Axelson right on the back bumper of Max Bird now, who, like you said, has not had a brilliant start to this race. I'm sure he won't be wanting to watch this one back. But at the moment, he's actually gone straight into the front end of a spinning Chris Shepherd. Scott Bugner gets into the back of, I believe that was Max Bird as well. And there was chaos there, Andy. And that's sort of what we half expected here at Thruxton at the final chicane.
That's exactly what we feared. Andy Carroll, you can see there, trying to do a 3-point turn to get back on from the grass, but that has absolutely ripped apart that battle from 4th place on back, really. Joel Lask survived it into 4th. Dave Buki, who literally needed a new ticket to get back into the track halfway through qualifying, is up there in 5th place. Josh Martin, where did Josh Martin qualify in the end? It wasn't that good, was it? He was a long way down the order, and he is up there now into the top 6. A brilliant recovery drive this from Josh Martin. Brad Smith 7th, Axelson 8th, Max Bird down to 9th, and almost certainly with some damage, and Reese Bell rounding out the top 10. But yes, exactly what we feared would happen there when you're so close to each other like that. If the car at the front of the group has an issue at that chicane, everyone else just piles in after them, nowhere to go. Car out wide is Brad Smith there. He's going to lose a couple of positions as he gets himself back onto the black stuff, but that was really unfortunate there. Carroll down to the back of the field. Shepherd likewise, both of them carrying damage. Really, really bad luck.
Yeah, and Thruxton proving there that although, yes, you can follow drivers, and yes, you can get into the slipstream, you really do need to be experienced in doing that, because I was doing a little bit of Nürburgring action in MX5 at the weekend, and you can do it on your own, and you can sort of learn the track on your own and everything, but as soon as you're into someone's slipstream and you try and follow them through, all of a sudden you're arriving at the corners 1 or 2 miles an hour quicker than you were before, and even though you were on the white line, you were on the edge on your own in qualifying or in practice. If you go through the corner in 1 or 2 extra miles an hour thanks to slipstream, you're probably going to end up being sucked onto the grass, and that's exactly what we saw there with, I believe, was it Brad Smith who we saw going off. So yeah, unfortunate for some drivers, just getting a little bit caught out, but these are all lessons that hopefully they'll learn for the second race. You know, touch wood, that's nice and clean, and obviously Brands Hatch we want to sort of forget about and move on from, but we will keep mentioning it until we see something a little bit cleaner. But Thruxton here, it's providing good entertainment, if nothing else, Andy, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a great battle until then, and it's not really like it was overly aggressive driving that caused that. It was just a mistake, I think, from Shepherd. He whacked that tyre stack and dead right in front of everyone. Now, Eric Axelson isn't stopping. He is marching his way up the order, past Josh Martin there for 6th place. Martin, by the way, started 20th on the grid. 20th on the grid, and he's just lost 6th position there to Axelson, but he's still well and truly in the fight. He's got the damaged Max Bird behind him. The front of Max's car is not that pretty, but it's still keeping up in the slipstream. Back to the inside goes Martin there. He's going to lean on Axelson. This could get close. Through goes Martin. Can he make the corner? Yes, just about, but surely Max Bird will get a run on the pair of them. He does. He goes to the inside of Axelson, who in turn is trying to get to the inside of Martin. Martin back to 6th then, and Bird the inside for 7th. Bit of a hip and shoulder there to Axelson. Eric won't like that, but he's lost the place, and Bird starting now the recovery drive.
I've absolutely no idea how Josh Martin managed to get through that chicane as Max Bird goes wide, and I'm not sure if that was a little bit of a push to pass, shall we say, from Eric Axelson, a bit of a thank you, here's your own medicine style thing from the first corner, or whether Max just genuinely missed the braking zone, we're not entirely sure. We probably won't find out, because it's unlikely that he'll finish on the grid. However, on the podium. However, we have had a lot of drama towards the front end of the field in this first race. Who's to say that's done and dusted. This fight for top 6 could very quickly turn into the fight for the race lead if they get a little bit tangled up for second place, which is exactly the fight that we've just jumped on board with, because Scott Bugner runs a little bit wide out of Church. Mick Sutton's got this very tidily done. Nice exit out of Church and going towards the club chicane. He's going to have the inside line. How wide is he going to force it? How late is he going to brake? It's very difficult to find your braking zone at Thruxton into that final couple of corners, but Mick Sutton's nailed it. Does he get through the chicane? Yes, he does.
Lovely move, that. I've also noticed, actually, they're pegging back Edmondson slightly because, yeah, look at that. Despite that side-by-side racing, they were half a second quicker than the race leader. Now, is this the start of the tyre situation coming into play? Remember, Mick Sutton is 30 kilos lighter than Edmondson. Bugner is 20 kilos lighter. So Mick Sutton, I think, I mean, he's driving well. Don't get me wrong. This is probably the best that I've seen Mick Sutton drive in the time that I've been working with the VRRC. Maybe that lack of ballast aboard that number 61 Honda Civic is starting to pay dividends, because he's creeping now towards the 1 second barrier from Max Edmondson, and that will start getting him right in the window to pick up a bit of a slipstream and close in even further. Brilliant drive this from Sutton, but I reckon he might have something for the leader still.
Yeah, well, on that previous, we'll jump to this battle in a second, but on that previous lap, worth noting that Edmondson was 0.4 of a second off of his best lap, or 0.3 of a second off of his best lap, whereas Mick Sutton is still within 1/10 of his best lap. And the reason why that's important is because it shows the tyre degradation from the beginning to the end. So Mick Sutton, with that less weight, might be just suffering less with the tyre deg than Max Edmondson, who he did warn us in his pole interview, of course, just earlier on. Oh, that's very wide by Axelson and Josh Martin. I was waiting to the club chicane before we bring this fight to life in terms of how we commentate it, but it looks like they're already doing the job for us, because they throw it off at Church. And Max Bird, although he does seem like he's got a little bit of damage on, he's going to potentially get past both of them, as Josh Martin just about holds onto the car to get it through the club chicane. Very much holds up Max Bird. Eric Axelson also a little bit held up, and in fact Josh Martin's somehow going to go for the move. I believe that might be Axelson letting him back through. If he is, he's not giving it easy.
Well, yeah, I'm not convinced he let him through. I think that was a genuine move from Martin. I've got to recalibrate my brain to figure out how on earth Josh Martin went from being completely sideways going into the chicane to making an overtake coming out of it. He then loses a place again going into the complex, or does he? No, stands his ground through the left-hander at Cobb, into the right-hander at Seagrave, where now Eric Axelson comes back into play around the outside of Max Bird. 2 wheels on the grass, keeps his foot in it, gets back to the inside of Josh Martin as well. This is terrific racing. Reese Bell is catching them as well in the sort of leopard print number 7 car in the background. Axelson leaning slightly on Martin there, who again has the inside for the next corner, but Axelson sweeps ahead, and for the time being at least gets that 6th place back, but then gets on the grass. Eric Axelson, no, he'd done all the hard work, and now he's off the road, loses 1, 2, maybe 3 places. Yes, Bell will get him 2, and out of it all, Josh Martin back into 6th place.
Yeah, and whilst that's been happening, there's been battles for the 2nd place still. Edmondson is still sort of, I wouldn't say getting away. He's pulled away slightly because Bugner and Sutton managed to fall over each other. I believe we got reports of Sutton maybe going off the track a little bit. And that's why he got overtaken by Bugner, as we see Max Bird slotting his way through on Josh Martin. This battle just doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. We've got 8.5 minutes of hopefully fast, frantic Civic Cup action. And it looks like maybe there's going to be battles from the likes of Max Bird in 6th position back, maybe even to 12th, and Simon Thorpe, because look at this, we're seeing a battle for the top 10, and those drivers we've been focusing on for so long in this race are not that far away. Mick Sutton and Scott Bugner rubbing each other up the wrong way, I imagine, at this point, because they're very much enjoying themselves, hopefully, and they're not getting a little bit well, sideways. We want this to keep as clean as possible, because Andy, it's a fantastic battle.
This is how it should be done, isn't it? I mean, every time we come to them, they're in a different order, and they're still side by side. Here we go. Bugner back up the inside now of Mick Sutton. Yeah, let's get them through Church Corner first. Yes, there they go. Through the right-hander, hop over the curbs. Through goes Bugner, and he might even hold on to the place for a few seconds up the hill. It is time, I think, for my if they worked together speech, though, isn't it? Because they were clearly catching Edmondson before they started this very entertaining battle for 2nd place. I think they've got better tyres than the race leader. They're just not willing to stay in the same order for more than about 300 metres at a time, because Sutton goes back through now at the chicane. They're 2.2 seconds off the leader, but the leader can sort of pace himself, can't he? As long as he's matching these guys' lap times. In fact, he was 0.3 quicker on the previous lap. he doesn't need to go any quicker. He doesn't need to push those tyres any harder. Edmondson doing everything that he needs to do for the time being to keep Sutton and Bugner at bay. I know Edmondson said he was going to work with Bugner over those early laps, but I'm sure Scott would like to get himself up there to contend for the win on his own terms. I mean, he was fighting Edmondson hard enough for the lead on the opening lap or so, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. But what I will say is Mick has thrown his cap in early for one of the drivers of the day from where he qualified to where he's currently running. He did a fantastic job, and I would say probably Josh Martin is as well. He's provided us with very entertaining racing, very good moves, and has qualified 20th place and is up running comfortably in the top 10 at the moment. So a few drivers there, as I said, throwing their cap in for that Power Max Valeting kit. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who had a little bit of a bruised first lap here at Thruxton, unfortunately, is fighting to get himself up into the top 15. In fact, it's Simon Thorpe he's battling with right now to get into 13th, and there's a little bit of a lean there. I wouldn't even say a lean, more of an elbow or shoulder barge probably on Simon Thorpe, but it does mean that he does get past him, with Andy Carroll come hunting just behind. Doesn't know which way to go. He wants to go to the inside, but he's been caught hesitating for too long. Goes to the outside at Church, which is never really where you want to be, but if he does get a nice undercut and gets a good exit and hits the apex, which he doesn't manage to do, he maybe could have got the run on both of those drivers. As it stands, he might only still have ambitions on getting into 14th place, but it looks like Dalton-Ayres is pulling away.
Yeah, for the time being, because Thorpe is sort of driving in his mirrors a bit now, isn't he? He's just sort of watching where Andy Carroll is placing his car and trying to cover off any attack that may be coming. And as a result, as you said, Dalton-Ayres getting away and catching, in fact, up the inside now, Paul Laramie. So Dalton-Ayres gains another place now, 12th position for him. This is more championship points, but of course every position he gains here is one position further back on the grid for race 2, because remember, everybody gets reversed to form the grid for that second race later on today. So it's a balancing act between getting the points or maybe trying to bag yourself a better grid position for race 2. Right now, though, Dalton-Ayres is on a points-gathering mission, clearly, because he keeps on moving up the order. He is, though, 4.6 seconds behind the Brad Smith Bell battle, so I reckon 12 might be as good as it gets.
Yeah, I'm just wondering as well, embarrassingly, I can't quite remember who will claim pole position if you finish in the pit lane. No, I didn't think so. We just got confirmation from broadcaster Tom O'Farrell. Carl Felvis won't be on pole position because he is DNFing. He's not able to finish the race because he's in the pit lane. However, Chris Shepherd, who's been ballistically quick in qualifying and shown real good pace, will be on pole position for race number 2 as it stands, because he's currently last out of the front runners, or out of the drivers that will finish this race, sort of thing. So Chris Shepherd, I'm sure, will be eyeing up a race 2 victory if he can get his hands on it. Josh Martin, Max Bird still battling it out with Eric Axelson just behind by the looks of it. Now these 3 drivers have been going at each other for about 10 minutes now, Andy, and they're not really any closer to figuring out who's going to finish where.
They're really not, are they? No. Nor, I would say, are the race leaders, because Mick Sutton, we don't have to cut to it just yet, but he's only 1.4 seconds now off the race leader, and he's shaken off Scott Bugner behind him. Andy Carroll. Wow, that was a close moment for Paul Laramie, who Carroll got into going through Allards, the first corner. And Laramie displaying some good car control there to keep hold of the car, keep hold of 13th place. But Andy Carroll, having been on the or involved at least in those shenanigans at the chicane early on in the race, really wanting to try and get his way back up the order, but he looks again to the inside through Seagrave, can't quite get there, so they head towards Noble, still in 13th and 14th places respectively. But yeah, keep an eye on that timing tower to the lead gap, which is continuing to come down. Now 1.2 seconds, they're going to be going on to their 13th lap this time, I believe, aren't they? So is there enough time here for Sutton to catch the race leader? I think there is, because he takes another couple of tenths out of Edmondson through the final chicane. It is clear to me, Jack, that Max Edmondson does not have as much tyre grip available to him at this point of the race as Mick Sutton does. That weight, that ballast, really starting to take hold.
Yeah, and I used the sort of correlation between the last lap and their overall best lap earlier on. I'll do exactly the same this time round, because Max Edmondson is struggling, as we can see, over a second slower on his last lap than he is on his best, whereas Mick Sutton's still around the 8/10 mark. So there's just tenths eating away Edmondson here by Mick Sutton. And to be honest, without sounding, I don't know, like I wasn't expecting or like I'm overly surprised, I will be very interested to chat to Mick Sutton after this race, and just to make sure it's him, because no offence to Mick Sutton, but this is I wouldn't say uncharacteristic, I wouldn't be so harsh as to say that, but it's a bit of a surprise, isn't it? He's really turned up tonight.
Yeah, well, like I said, he had a 10th and a 13th place at Brands Hatch. Now, granted, it was a slightly bigger grid, but only slightly. We've still got 22 starters here tonight, with the Redfords, Will and Mark Redford, making a late appearance on the grid, I noticed. So only 2 fewer than we had at Brands Hatch. So yeah, this is a genuine improvement in pace. Thruxton brings this out in drivers, though. There are some people out there who really are Thruxton specialists, and Mick Sutton clearly is. He's so good on the brakes into that club chicane, really closes in on Edmondson. Might have been a bit too late on the brakes that time there, because all of the time he gained on the way in, he loses on the way out. Now, interestingly, they crossed that finish line there with about a minute and 27, 28 left on the clock. They're lapping in the 125s. So at that rate, they've got 2 more laps here to do. That is good news for Sutton. That is terrible news for Max Edmondson. That's 2 more laps of the Thruxton circuit that he and his front tyres need to survive.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure if he had a 2 or 3 second gap, he might actually use that and try and slow up just a touch to go through the chicane, just to finish the race. But he doesn't have that luxury anymore, because he's only got a 7/10 gap to Mick Sutton, like we've been saying quite a few times. And as I said, very impressed with Mick Sutton right now. And look at the different lines there, Andy, as they go through Noble and onto the back straight. Mick Sutton using a lot of lock, clearly showing he's got more tyres in it than Max does, who's having to sort of get the turn done early and almost straight line the apex. As they go through Church, it's down to about 6 tenths of a second, but there you go, Max Edmondson running very wide. Mick Sutton's eyes will light up. He won't get the move done going into the club chicane this time round, but that is again further proof that Max is feeling the pressure, and there is a race victory potentially on the horizon here for Mick Sutton, who dives and I would say probably takes my line through the braking zone of the final chicane. Max Edmondson opening it all up a little bit more, but there's certainly vulnerability there in the back of Max's car.
Resisting the temptation to point out that your line cost him 2 tenths through the chicane there, because
I wasn't very good at Thruxton.
Whilst it gained him time on the way in, it's clearly a bit like the last lap actually, compromised him a bit mid-corner. However, what that will do is that will definitely get the attention of Edmondson, because if Sutton was a car length or so closer there, he'd have been up the inside, so late on the brakes was he into the chicane. So Edmondson knows that on this, the final lap of the race, absolutely must nail Church Corner, get a good run up Woodham Hill, and not be vulnerable to attack into the braking zone of the club chicane. Edmondson's done a really good job here of managing this gap. He sort of almost allowed Sutton to get to within a second of him, and then just started to match the times that Mick Sutton is setting behind. Sutton with a good run there through Goodwood, though, gets himself down to about 6.5 tenths back. This is the key corner, though. Church Corner. Don't run wide on the grass. Don't get too greedy on the throttle. That was pretty much inch perfect from both of them. And you can see that Sutton is still 6 tenths back. This is exactly the distance back that he was a lap ago. And for that reason, I don't think he's quite close enough. Unless there's a mistake here for Max Edmondson, it looks like it's his race. Sutton comes in on that usual tight line, the Oliphant line, hits the curb, can't quite get through there as quickly as the race leader, though. And so, for the second week in a row, it is a pole position to a race 1 win for Max Edmondson, who wins here at Thruxton by half a second over Mick Sutton. Scott Buckner in third, and this is the almost fight for 4th place. But Dave Buki, who we actually haven't seen a lot of in this race, is going to pick up the pieces nicely and score a season best result of 4th place in the first race here at Thruxton, with Joel Lask rounding out the top 5. Max Bird gets the better of that fight for 6th place ahead of Martin Dorman. Axelson there, Andy Dorman getting himself ahead of Eric Axelson on the final lap. They're about to come through now, 8th and 9th respectively. No, they're not, because Axelson gets him back again. The run to the line. So Axelson goes 8th, Dorman 9th, and Brad Smith rounds out the top 10 in what was, Jack, a very, very interesting and exciting race. I really enjoy that sort of tyre wear development that was going on during the race, and it kept things very, very close at the end.
It did indeed, yeah. It's almost like we were watching a soft compound, wasn't it, of how quickly those degradations happened. But Chris Shepherd looks like he might not start on pole position for race number 2, but he will start on the front row, because he's going to finish in 19th place, and Mark Redford is finishing in 20th. And I actually remember Mark Redford. All of a sudden, he appeared in one of the races that I commentate on a Thursday night. He does a NASCAR series as well that I commentate on. All of a sudden, I got very excited when I recognised the name. Anyway, that's we'll talk about that a little bit later. But of course, we've got to go to a quick advert before we have a chat to our top 3.
Well, the Thruxton circuit delivering everything that we expected it to there. Lots of good close racing, a really fascinating battle towards the end of the race for the race win. And we can hear from the drivers who made it onto the podium in round number 3 of the VRRC Civic Cup right now, because for the second time tonight, and indeed the second time this season, it is Max Edmondson on top with a race victory, race 1, from pole position. I was going to say, Max, that all of that went pretty much according to the script, but 2 or 3 lead changes on that first lap of the race between you and Scott Bugner, I wasn't necessarily expecting.
No, I wasn't expecting either, to be fair. I thought we were just going to push, but yeah, that went pretty well, to be fair. Everyone behind me was just scrapping, and I just got my head down and drove off, but Mick was really quick at the end with the tyres. Fair play to him. So yeah, well done to Scott and Mick.
We'll get Mick's side of that in a moment or two, but we were sort of assuming there, whilst watching that play out, that you were indeed running into tyre difficulties towards the end. But we noticed that Mick, he caught you quite rapidly once he broke away from Scott, but then the gap sort of stayed at about 7 or 8 tenths or so. Had you been keeping a bit in reserve there for the last few laps?
No, I was trying my hardest the whole time. I mean, going out of turn 4 or 5, whichever one out of the chicane is, I was a second down. That's how much the tyres had gone. But yeah, Mick was just really quick at the end there.
All right, well, fair enough. So you were having to push right from the get-go then. It worked out for you, though. You got the race victory. As I said, your second win in 3 races that was, and that will put you in a very good championship position now. You're only 5 points off the championship lead anyway, so pretty much the perfect start to your season this so far.
Yeah, it would have been better to have a bit of a better result for the reverse grid at race 2 at Brands, but so far it's gone pretty well.
Excellent. Well, fingers crossed you can avoid the worst of the misfortune in race 2 in a few moments' time. But for the time being, huge congratulations on that race 1 performance.
Thank you. Well done, Mick. Well done, Scott.
So Max Edmondson then, winner of the first race here at Thruxton. But Jack, what a performance that was from Mick Sutton to claim second place, and he's with you now.
Yeah, you started to tell us a little bit about that race, Mick, during the advert break. But to quote Tom O'Farrell, our broadcaster, how the hell did you do that?
Mate, I honestly, I cannot tell you how I did that. I just had a good start, and for some reason, I think it was the toe at the start, because Max made a mistake in the chicane, which meant that we all got away. And I was just sitting behind Scott being towed along, and I don't know, mate. I honestly don't know how I did it. I've never driven as consistently at that in my life ever, and I can't believe I did it. Simple as that.
It looked very quickly. It looked inevitable at one point, the last sort of like 5 minutes leading, once you stopped fighting with Scott, that you would catch up to our winner, who was, the mind has completely gone blank, Max Edmondson. But then the sort of last 2 laps there, he sort of lost a couple of tenths of a second. Did you just lose the momentum or lose the tyres or something? You couldn't.
To be honest, I couldn't believe where I was. That's what it was. I've never have I raced. I mean, I've had a couple of podiums in other championships with VRRC, but I wasn't expected. I was just, I think, a whole set of luck that just happened to come together for me. What's going to happen in this reverse grid race, I have no idea, because I didn't have to do many overtakes in that race because I was just towed along. But we'll see. But honestly, I don't think I've ever sweat so much on a simulator, and I'm very, very happy. I don't care what happens in this one, really.
Lovely image. We'll let you get back and concentrate on race 2, but Mick Sutton, congratulations on that second place.
Thank you very much, and well done to everybody else. Thank you.
Yes, well done to you, Mick, for second place. Very quickly, we'll chat to Scott Bugner, because I know the next race is not that far away. Scott, third place, solid enough result, but were you also struggling with tyres there towards the end?
Yeah, I'm happy with third. Mick done really well with the tyres, so yeah, just got to try and pick through the pack now and see what happens.
All right, well, we have literally 20 seconds before the race starts, so we'll leave you to it, Scott, but well done on the podium.
Thank you.
Scott Bugner then getting himself a third place finish there in race number 2.